And it speaks to the challenges that Donald Trump has, going down to a state where he may be way ahead, but where there's a lot of evangelicals for Ted Cruz to focus on.
Yeah, Joe, we came down straight from New Hampshire to try to get a sense ahead of wherever the current understanding is of what's going on with South Carolina Republicans. This was a group of undecided Republicans who say they'll vote in the primary. Some were sort of loosely attached to one or another candidate, but all of them said at least they could still change their mind. And what was surprising for folks, given the coverage out of New Hampshire, was a really sharp focus on two candidates, Cruz and Trump. And in the case of Donald Trump, they liked a lot about him. They thought he'd do well, but there were some real concerns about some of the stylistic things that seemed to play well in Iowa and certainly New Hampshire, but may not play as well here in the Bible Belt. So we're going to talk more in detail about some of these folks now. Donald Trump.
He's very brave to have no political background and to jump out there and run for the highest office in our nation.
He's espousing what the people are feeling.
What do you think of the way he's talked about his religious beliefs?
I'm not sure he's such a religious person.
I think he's relatively honest, but I don't believe him on what he says about his religion.
Raise your hand if you disagree with Carrie and Dan and think that Mr. Trump is a religious person. Anybody disagree? So you all agree he's not. You all said you didn't think he was as religious as he says he is. Raise your hand if you're troubled by that. I want to show you one more clip of Mr. Trump.
He gets the nomination, they're going to sue his ass up and knock the out of ISIS. And you can tell them to go themselves.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
You all have a pretty strong reaction to this. Is it something that you consider disqualifying or just not your cup of tea?
It's crass.
It's just, it's not professional. It's just comes.
It's not how you want your president of the United States to present.
It's not that kind of an image. That's the bad image.
This is who's going to be negotiating with other world leaders.
Jacob, do you think the aspects of his life and what we saw in the clip, are those the kind of things that might hurt him more in South Carolina than they did in Iowa and New Hampshire?
The Bible Belt?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This
we don't tolerate
this is the belt buckle right here.
So a lot of strength for Donald Trump amongst this group, but some real concerns about some aspects you saw there, some questions about whether he's presidential enough. But there's no doubt that he's a dominating figure along with Ted Cruz here. We asked questions about Jeb Bush and John Kasich and Marco Rubio. All three of them will take away things from this focus group that will encourage them. But there's no doubt that they're all seen more negatively, by this group at least, than Trump and Cruz.
And yet, Trump, with all the problems he had with those evangelicals, they all thought that he was going to win. Maybe that's just because he won New Hampshire. We talked about it before the New Hampshire vote, to expect Ted Cruz to surprise because he's got the ground game. Ted Cruz did surprise. And he's got a lot larger group to target, focus on, and get out to vote. I mean, this is, if Trump's up by, let's say, 15 right now, this is going to be a close race between Trump and Cruz, right?
And so just enormous interest in Ted Cruz, and a lot of the things that people in Washington think about Ted Cruz, that he's unlikable, that he's too political, that he's too self-interested. This group didn't think that at all, and it was interesting to hear from them where they get their information about what they know and what they think about Cruz.
What about Jeb Bush?
Jeb Bush, very negative. The same Bush fatigue that John Hammond and I found in our focus groups in both Iowa and New Hampshire. Very down on the notion of a third Bush. We showed them a clip of Jeb Bush talking about national security, which he, along with Lindsey Graham, his big backer here now, are emphasizing. And they loved it when they saw Bush talking about national security. They all said that was very strong. They were surprised. They see him largely the way Donald Trump has painted him as a weak person. But I think Jeb Bush can be encouraged this long time between now and the primary. If people can see him particularly talking about security, I think he maybe can change some minds here. But again, there was that stubborn Bush fatigue. Yeah. Whether they liked his father and his brother or not, they don't want this group did not want a third Bush.
Let's listen to what the group had to say about Ted Cruz. Take a look.
Ted Cruz.
Trustworthy.
Very good appeal.
Believable.
I like that he knows the Constitution inside and out.
Steadfast.
Likeable.
When he stands for something, he's like a pit bull.
Very religious individual.
Actually, last week we were talking at church, a lot of people just had a very positive things to say about him.
So Sandy's gotten positive information about him from church and folks there. Who else has gotten positive information about him, and where have you gotten it from?
Glenn Beck's show. Yeah, on the radio.
Yeah, I listen to Glenn Beck too, and he's very much a Cruz supporter. And I've listened to him for years, and I trust his opinion.
Who do you think is going to win the South Carolina primary?
I'm afraid Trump.
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 Probably Trump.
Probably Trump.
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 Unfortunately, I think Trump.
Ted Cruz.
Trump.
If your only two choices in this race were Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, who would you vote for?
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
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 Undecided.
Cruz.
Cruz.
So now I want to try to talk about a little confusion I'm having now. You almost all said Trump was going to win the primary. You also all said you like Cruz a lot. So you're all South Carolina voters. So I'm confused why you're so high on Cruz for the most part, and yet you think Trump's going to win.
One thing that Trump does is he has a very passionate crowd of people that follow him. And I think the thing that's going against a lot of the other candidates is people are tired of the same old, same old. They want somebody who is an outsider, and he is that person.
There also may be some people who, after you show them the vulgarities, are not going to say on camera that they're going to vote for Donald Trump, but make it in the voting booth and go, well, maybe we need to shake things up. But right now,
It's a different
there's
place.
no doubt, Mark Halperin, Donald Trump has big problems with evangelicals in South Carolina. We knew he would. And in the SEC primary that's coming up. So he's got